It's an Epcot theme park of childless affluence. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, there's a big story, and I want to get the attribution right here because I know people are going to rush off and read The Atlantic under the headline of "The Future of the City is Childless." And it starts off by talking about the fact that the number of babies born in New York City's 5 boroughs has dropped by 9% and Manhattan by 15% since 2011. At this rate, Manhattan's infant population will be cut in half in 30 years. Same thing happening in cities across the country. By the way, the lowest percentage of children in any of the major 100 American cities is, no surprise, San Francisco. But Seattle, Washington D.C., even though Washington D.C.'s population has grown by 20% in recent times, the number of children has actually declined. Bill, it seems to me that if you turn over the cities to nothing but essentially young, white, college-educated, childless, affluent workaholics, that's going to have a fundamental effect on what has been the Democrat Party's stronghold, will it not?
When they say the future of the cities is childless, that is it's an erroneous statement if it's not an intentional lie. Because the future of anything that is childless has no future, and if they're trying to say that kids are going to be born out on the farm and migrate to New York, well, there's always that kind of thing has always happened, and it'll continue to happen. But the idea that a country can move into a world with declining birth rates would work, so long as it didn't decline too precipitously and so long as they stabilized at a level, and most importantly, if everybody in the world were doing so. But that's certainly not the case.
Well, in addition to the farm kids moving into the big city and getting married or not, and not having babies, they say that this is one of the reasons why there's a constant need for an inflow of immigrants. But even the foreign immigrants don't want to stay long because it's not a great place to raise kids. And so a lot of them are coming in and using, for example, New York City as a port of entry. They work there for a while in their sister-in-law's restaurant, and then they move out to New Jersey.
This is a really big issue. And you could make the case that this is the biggest issue. It is. I don't know what it's composed of. I have some pretty solid guesses as to some of the components of it. Certainly, the increase of affluence and wealth means that we don't need to have as many children, because, frankly, not everybody thinks about children as supporting us in our old age. But I come from coal miners and mill workers in Lancashire, and they had 10, 11 people in the family, not just to take care of mom and dad when mom and dad were old, but because there was just simply so much work to be done that this was your own unpaid workforce, and you could count on them. So needless to say, the kind of the economic drive for larger families is largely gone. And certainly, I'm not saying that I'd like to return to either the squalor or the overwhelming burden of having a family of 11 kids or whatever to take care of and feed. But I am saying that something seems to be going terribly wrong, and that the entire life force of civilization is Western civilization is rapidly declining. I suspect there are environmental things involved. I've heard anecdotally, but I've heard it enough to really believe it, that testosterone levels in Western civilizations are just plummeting. So
the story says that people are having less sex as well.
Right. So you have to ask yourself, and I'm trying to be fair here. As far as human happiness is concerned, is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? Is a future with fewer kids, more free time, more ability to live a life, your own life, and accomplish things you want to accomplish, and still raise 2 or 3 kids, but as opposed to having, as in the case of my ancestors and yours as well, I'm sure, where basically the entire function of mom and dad is to provide for the family. They don't get to be artists or painters or writers. No, they got to work in coal mines to feed the kids. certainly there's a balance in there, but I do worry that if losing children as the primary source of joy and fulfillment in your life is the future, then I don't think there is a future.
Well, and it's the future in the cities is the point of this bill. I mean, it says that the counties that make up Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia have shed, between 2010 and 2018, have shed a combined 2 million residents. Meanwhile, as all these, sort of young childless people move into the cities, 25 metro areas now account for half of the U.S. economy. And again, I'd like to get back to that question of the impact on this. Obviously, the Democratic Party will benefit by having, these wealthy nuclei of people who tend to lean in that progressive direction. On the other hand, they need the bodies too. They need the numbers, and this would bode ill for them.
Well, this is exactly what we're seeing. The Democrats, I'm speaking in generalities, obviously, but the progressives are basically saying life is much easier without kids, so we get to do the things that we want to rather than sacrificing for kids. So we're going to do the things that we want to, and this makes our lives much better. Unfortunately, if we do this, those damn conservatives are going to outbreed us, which means they're going to outvote us. So in order for us to maintain this self-centered lifestyle, we're going to have to bring in people from outside of the country to do the job that Americans won't do, which is to vote for progressive policies. And the problem there is that when you are indiscriminate about this, and I know all about the progressives and their dog whistles and all the rest of this nonsense. When I say when you're indiscriminate about immigration, I'm not talking about where you come from or what you look like or your skin color, or even your religion for that matter. When I say you're indiscriminate about who you allow to emigrate into America, what I mean by that is you are philosophically indiscriminate. You are counting all bodies as equal. And you are not taking into effect the one thing that had always been in place in the story of American immigration and assimilation, and that is the burning desire to be an American, not to live in America. These are two very distinct, important differences that just this second flew into my head. There is a difference between wanting to be an American and wanting to live in America. God, I cannot believe it took me 10 years to get this really as clear as it is. This country prior to the 60s or so had been populated by entire peoples, nations, where suddenly it dawned on them that the most adventurous of them anyway, and the hardest working ones and the bravest ones said, I want to be an American because if I go to America and work hard, I can have some control over my life and not have to live this kind of drudgery and toil and endless backbreaking labor for the Duke or the Baron or the Earl or whatever the case may be. But that desire to become an American as an immigrant brought with it a concomitant understanding that this was going to require work and discipline and self-discipline, delayed gratification, all of these things. That's what made this country what it is. If you take the process of becoming an American out of the equation, in other words, I want to go live in a country where my hard work will make my life better and therefore the entire society gets better. If you take that out and you just leave, I want to live in America, then what you've got is somebody who wants to bring all of the habits that have made where they're coming from an unpleasant place to be. They want to bring those same habits to America, enjoy the benefits that have been provided by people who have a different work ethic than they do, and then simply watch the country become more and more overloaded with people who have come to live here but haven't come here to be Americans. And this is what the immigration thing is all about, and this is why this birth rate thing is so destructive. If we could somehow look into people's souls and see what their intention was to come here, and if let's just say for the sake of the philosophical argument, we had one of those X-ray screeners or something like at the airport, and somebody stepped in that, and this machine would scan around, and the machine would determine whether or not they want to come here to work, make their lives better, live the American dream, or whether they basically just wanted to come here to enjoy all the benefits and maybe make some of the money since I'm at home. If we could have that scanner, I'd be willing to let in just about anybody who who basically came out of that with a green light. So declining birth rates they're not just important, and they're not just kind of important. They're everything. We are seeing two really interesting examples right now in front of our eyes. One of them is Sweden, and the other one is Japan. Both of them have very, very, very low birth rates, far lower than even the American domestic birth rate is. In Sweden, as the birth rates declined, there's a history, Scandinavia in general, but there's a history, Europe in general, but there's a history of having watched Sweden import people to do the jobs and to keep the socialism pyramid in place, because you have to have a pyramid. Socialism is a Ponzi scheme. 4 people can work hard enough to support one person for their life, but one person can't support 4. It's just not possible. So Sweden's answer has been to import Swedes, but the Swedes that they're importing don't want to be Swedes. They want to live in Sweden. And so we're watching Sweden become a place where blonde people, blue-eyed people cannot walk through certain neighborhoods in Malmo, for example, without somebody getting on a cell phone and having a flash mob appear and making it crystal clear to them that they're not welcome here in their own country.
I'm looking forward, Bill, to the beer company that runs the ad of the Swedish Burkini team.
If that weren't so pathetically
let me just finish.
True. Let me just go
ahead.
back to my example of Japan. Japan is different. Japan is an island nation. Japan's racial identity is so strong that Japan has decided not to go this road. Japan is not importing people to become Japanese. Japan is simply imploding. It's maintaining its national appearances, and its culture is more or less consistent. But what you're seeing is this kind of, it's not even a moral rot, Scotty. It's deeper than that. It's like a biological misfire where in Japan, more and more and more young people have utterly given up. Forget kids. They've given up on sex. They've given up on dating.
This article says that as well.
Huge portions of the Japanese population, growing every day, consists of women who basically go out to work and have utterly given up on men, and they rent romantic boyfriends who are not necessarily sexual partners. They're just people you can go out with and have a little bit of confidence. But the Japanese men, by and large, the women too, but mostly the men, they have these video game, computer game places where you can just go and stay. You just get a room there, and you stay there, and you got Coke machine outside, and you just sit there and play computer games, and you watch your anime, and you sleep with a pillow that's got a print of your anime girlfriend on it. And this is watching a civilization circling the drain. We're not that far gone here yet, but these kind of things are very alarming.
Bill, there's another demographic issue as it affects specifically the Democratic Party. It's not just that there are fewer people living in cities or there's a negative migration out of these major cities, but the effect of reshuffling the deck is putting large concentrations of young liberals in places that don't really benefit the Democrats. For example, and this comes into play when you talk about gerrymandered congressional districts as well as the Electoral College. Hillary Clinton won Brooklyn by 461,000 votes, about 7 times the margin by which she lost Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And President Trump is president because he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He didn't.
So all the liberals are concentrating into smaller and smaller places. And which is now you know why they are so hard pushing for the popular vote to elect the president, right? Because what you're basically saying is, if all of the let's just say, clarify the argument, let's say that all the liberals in the country decide to pull up their roots and they go to move to New York and California, and that's it. There's not another liberal in the country except in New York and California. So the president, under the Electoral College system, wins California, wins the New York, and loses the presidency every time. But if there is a popular vote, it doesn't matter anymore. New York's population and LA's population together combined can be enough to defeat the rest of the country. Now you know why they want to get rid of the Electoral College, because it tends to smooth out these kind of pockets of intense concentration of votes, which tend to favor
And then the
Urbanists,
decisions that are
progressive.
made at the federal level would tend to favor the people in the Epcot theme park of childless affluence.
If the popular vote replaces the Electoral College. But if it doesn't, that's something else. There's one other thing I want to talk about here, Scott. It's really important. My wife and I happen to, as a result of hard work on both of our parts for 50 years now or longer, we don't live in a deluxe neighborhood by any means. We don't live in Beverly Hills or any of those places, and I don't want to. But we have a very, very nice neighborhood in the valley, which consists of private homes, and it's the kind of place where we can just walk around the block at 2 o'clock in the morning and be perfectly 100% comfortable with that. And I love that neighborhood, and I love the fact that they do their own 4th of July parade. Everybody gets together, and then we just walk around the block and wave flags. It's great. But the one thing that is striking to me, and to my wife as well, is the absence of children. It's not that there are no children, but they're not visible. Now, many of them, I suspect, are inside the house on their devices. But I'd like to just kind of bring this up as a close on this topic. There's something wrong with the neighborhood that is safe and affluent and quiet. There's something wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there's something wrong, Bill Whittle will put his finger on it, and 5 days a week we do that right here at BillWhittle.com with not only this show, Bill Whittle Now, but we also produce a 3-person panel discussion show with Stephen Green called Right Angle. Bill does his weekly episodes of the Stratosphere Lounge, which is streamed live on Twitch TV, and you can also watch it at BillWhittle.com. And of course, the Firewall episodes, in addition to other projects that come along from time to time, like the new Apollo 11 series that was just released by our friends at Esoteric Radio Theater and the Daily Wire. We know that the faithful members at BillWhittle.com have made it possible for us to be in a position to do this over the many years, and we're grateful to them. If you'd like to join their ranks, please visit BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.